The success of the Truman Doctrine is going to allow the United States to go ahead and put that kind of policy on steroids. So beginning in 47-48, the United States is going to offer to give assistance to all of these European nations that are trying to rebuild their economy. Places like France and Italy had not recovered from the war as late as 1948. This would allow an opportunity for the communists to come in and gain influence in these nations. So the United States basically told all nations of Europe, look, if you give us a plan when it comes to your economic recovery, we'll help finance it. We offer it to all European nations, including those in Eastern Europe, and even Russia. And Russia is going to say, not a cent, you're not going to give us a cent, and neither are you going to give any money to any of the Eastern European countries that are under our influence, right? So as a result, the United States gives at least $12 billion worth of money to all of these Western countries, and it's wildly successful. Places like France, Italy, and Holland are going to be able to rebuild their countries and rebuild their economies. The reason, of course, is to keep the communists from getting any sort of influence in these nations. The plan worked. It was successful. So at this point, the United States implemented containment through the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. Both were successful. We then turned to Germany, particularly the western sectors controlled by Britain, France, and the United States. And in a step towards containment, the United States basically puts all of these sectors into one government and gives them a general self-government, general sense of self-government. We arm them to the teeth, and we call it basically Western Germany. Now, what do you think the Soviet Union's going to do about this? Are they going to be happy about that? No. They're going to see, like I said before, a Germany reunifying and rearming. They didn't like that movie before, did they? So they're going to have to respond, and they respond in numerous ways. One way that we're going to talk about is through the Berlin Blockade. And between 1948 and 1949, the Soviet Union cuts off ground access to Berlin. Remember, Berlin is in the East German sector, right? This is the Soviet sector. And so why are they doing this? Well, the Soviet Union, it's never really in the habit of calling a press conference and explaining itself, right? But clearly, they're trying to send a message. Stop unifying Western Germany or force the Western Allies out of Berlin. Now, you can imagine the advice that Truman's going to get. Blast your way through. Fight your way to Berlin. Truman doesn't do that. What the United States and the British do is a really good idea. They don't go over ground to Berlin. Instead, they're going to go in the air. They're going for approximately a year. Anything that West Berlin needs is going to be flown in. I'm talking about everything, even coal. What do you think those Soviet advisors are going to say when they start seeing the first of Western Allied planes, particularly United States Air Force planes, coming into Berlin? What's going to be their advice? How about shoot them down, right? Well, it proved, however, that the Soviet Union wasn't that crazy because, after all, not a single shot was fired against these aircraft. They let the planes over. You can see that this was pretty important because pretty soon we're going to begin to learn that we are involved in a balance of terror, because in 1949, the Soviet Union is going to explode its first atomic bomb. This might not be comfortable, but for a half a century, this mutually assured destruction, or MAD, is going to keep the United States and the Soviet Union alive for 50 years. So we went ahead and we created West Germany, the German Federal Republic, in 1949. In response, the Soviet Union will create the German People's Republic, or the German Democratic Republic of Eastern Germany. And this split that was supposed to be temporary seemed to be permanent, or at least lasted for 40 years. So with the application of containment, what it proved was the United States and the West could be successful, but they concluded that they would need a combined military force to oppose the Soviet Union. So in 1949, the United States will lead in the effort to create an alliance known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. It was a mutual defense military alliance. What does that mean? It basically means that an attack on one of its member nations is an attack on all the member nations. Now, it begins with 12 and has since expanded, including some countries that that alliance was actually aimed towards. NATO had a combined military force, and its first commander was a man named Dwight Eisenhower. You might have heard of him. NATO's force was not as big enough to go toe-to-toe with the Red Army, but what was backing NATO's army? All those American planes carrying all those American bombs. Now, I don't know if the Soviet Union was going to go and march through Europe. Probably not. But this was a great deterrent. NATO planes armed with nuclear weapons. So let's put this all together. Containment, you get the idea. You understand how these things were used to implement? Containment was so successful in Europe, absolutely successful. Short-term, long-term, you name it, it succeeded. There was no significant spread of communism throughout Europe. It worked in the long term because of what happened to the Soviet Union. Oh, yeah, in 1991, it fell apart. So if all we had to do and be concerned with after World War II was in the Cold War was Europe, we'd be in really good shape. But unfortunately, there was more to the world than Europe. In the Far East, we're going to see massive failure. And that's what we'll pick up in the next video.